All right, ladies and gentlemen, Todd Richards here. Welcome you to Roots, Heart, and
So,
it's
yeah.
our good friend Chef Stephan here. Welcome to the first episode of this wonderful show that we have here on all platforms. Chef Stephan and I, came together after writing this wonderful book, Roots, Heart, Soul, and we really have one of the best guests ever to talk about Roots, Heart, Soul, Amy Condon, who traveled feels like traveled the world with me to get this book done. And we did this book in COVID and everything. I don't want to give the whole story away, but it's just fun. Tell everyone about Amy and why she's here.
So, Amy, welcome to the very first episode of
Ah,
Roots, Heart, and Soul. We are
Mm.
so
thank
excited to
you.
have you with us. Just a short bio of who Amy is, and then I'll let Amy finish up. Uh, Amy is a writer, author, journalist who's written many books. She's the author of the biography "A Nervous Man." Shouldn't be here in the first place. The Life of Bill Baggs, and then she's the co-author of the book by Chef Todd Richards, Roots, Heart, and Soul. Welcome, Amy, to the show.
Welcome. Thank you so much for welcoming. I'm so excited to be part of this.
Uh,
I'm
uh,
so glad to be back with the crew here.
right? It's been a long time since we've
It
all been together
has.
in one format or the other.
I know.
It's
It,
been
it,
quite an adventure.
All right. I said we started writing this book in prior to COVID, but COVID happened. But you also wrote a book for a good friend of ours, Matthew Rayford, as well. So you always been in our family, regardless, of how we got there. But
And we shot part of that book in COVID. That's what was
that's
so
right,
funny. It was like,
right?
but like I look through that book and I'll go, oh, that's my front porch. Like it's all the ways you're not supposed to do photography for a cookbook, but it turned out.
Uh, uh, well,
So,
I
so
mean,
Amy, before we dive in into this very deep conversation and this adventure between you and Chef Todd Richards, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a native of Fort Worth, Texas, and I left Fort Worth in 1993, thinking I would be away for a year, doing an internship in Miami, and I ended up staying 16 years in Miami.
oh wow.
Uh, and that is a whole nother life because I was actually an urban planner. Um, I had
Wow.
studied journalism and political science and thought, oh, I really want to understand how cities and counties work because that's what I want to write about is communities and how are decisions made that affect people's lives. So I thought I'd go there for a year, and I ended up being sort of enamored with the whole planning process and actually working with the communities. But that sort of gnawing thing that always sticks with you, like, oh, I took a detour that I didn't mean to take for so long.
Right.
I was like, I thought I was going to do this for a little while and then go back to writing, and somehow 16 years just went. So I kind of went to my husband. I said, so if I quit my job and go back to school to study writing because I've been so out of that loop for so long, would you hate that? And he's like, no, I'll take early retirement and let's go both do what we want to do. Um, Life is short. And, his father had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Mm.
And my father, who was healthy, athletic, and had finally kind of found himself, was felled by Guillain-Barré syndrome, and like his life ended like that. And so both of us were like, who knows what's going to happen? So let's
Wow.
go do this. And we came to Savannah because we'd been here a lot of times, and they had just started a writing program in nonfiction writing at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And we were like, it's a 2-year program. We'll be in Savannah 2 years. Well, it's 15 years later.
Right.
But I had always loved food writing. I have a stupid big collection and have no more shelves to put all the cookbooks. And I read them like novels. And I love them as the biographies that they become and the cultural and anthropological things that they become. And so the crazy funny thing that happened was my first job in Savannah while I was going to grad school was for Back in the Day Bakery. with Cheryl and Griff Day.
Yeah, Cheryl and Griff Day. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was filling out the application to become what was called a sugar nut, someone who would work at the front counter and sling some cupcakes for people. And sometimes I get to
Cheryl's name for
yeah,
a title,
we were all called sugar nuts,
right.
Which I adore. And I am proud to wear that title. So they said, what's your career objective? And I said, I want to be a celebrated food writer. I mean, like, how arrogant is that? And I kind of just did it on a whim. So
no
embarrassed
arrogance about that.
But
right.
she told me later that's what made her hire me, because I clearly it had been years since I had any service experience. And so about a couple of months into that, she said, Griff and I are interested in running a cookbook. Do you know anything about that and what we need to do? And I was actually in the middle of doing a proposal class where I actually had to write a book proposal, and perfect timing. So that's how the cookbook career got started, being co-writer to a chef, because they gave me my first chance on a very untested writer at the time, but we got picked up by Artisan. It became a New York Times bestseller. Their story, so beautifully compelling, and sort of hit at just this perfect right moment of the scratch baking craze, and the story where people were starting to tell their stories about their moms and the lessons they learned in their grandmother's kitchens, where it was much less, I'm a professional chef who went to culinary school and therefore I'm a celebrity on the Food Network, and I've competed on every cupcake challenge there is. This was really a deeply authentic story of two people who fell in love with baking as children and wanted to create a community in Savannah around scratch baking. And they did that for 22 years. They created a community. So that is... And then that's when, like, I guess the fire in my belly was like, ooh, there are so many stories out there to tell around food.
I mean, just speaking about Cheryl, I mean, most people and Griff, most people don't know that they met on Soul Train, so she was
I knew she was a Soul Train dancer.
Yeah, it's something about, cooks and chefs and everything. We always find a way to have rhythm somehow, whether it's on Soul Train, or, listening to Calypso or DJing or just playing music,
And she can still bust those moves, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. One thing, Stephan and I really wanted to talk about, that you brought up before we really dive into Roots Heart. So it's really the process, because I think that both of us get asked that question a lot. And really, what is the process of writing a cookbook? And there's no guarantee it's going to be successful. But, but what is just the, beginning steps, of the process so that, we can really tell people the beginning steps of it, and then we can tell the story of Roots, Heart, and Soul and how it intertwines into that process.
If you want to get a cookbook published, the most important thing to do is really start with a proposal, because that gets your brain kind of keyed into what is the intention here? What is the authentic story to tell here? And there's a very specific format for cookbook proposals or any nonfiction book proposal that's, this is what this book is about. This is who I am and why I'm the right person to write this at the right time. How is my story distinguished different or how is this cookbook in the sea of cookbooks that are out there every year different? And what is it going to add to the canon? And who am I? Like, what do I bring to this in terms of my profile and platform? So a lot of that's answered by the chef. But if you're the co-writer, your job really is to listen. And at that point, too, you're I always sort of think of the co-writer in the position of both counselor you're listening, and you do a lot of nodding and because you're taking it in. You're sponging. You're like, okay, what is this person saying? How do they say it? So it doesn't sound like me, it sounds like you. And how, like, what are you saying, as well as what's the subtext of you're not saying? And so that first part is really that sort of sponging. And then the second part is sort of shepherding. How do we take all of these little lambs of stories and keep them together so that, they find they're healthy and, make their way. And then you're the Sherpa because you have to carry it forward and make it make sense. Because the chef, you have to be engaged in, like, here are the recipes. Here's how we make them. Here's how we test them. Here's how, like, this is what I want to convey. And so that process from book proposal to actually finished book too is a big wide margin, because what you think sometimes the book is going to be about. And I mean, like, I'm going to use yours as a case very specifically. We started with your idea of how food travels just in America and from the north to the south through the Great Migration, and using the churches as the conveyance of welcoming people into different communities. But as we were talking, and I think we were just sitting there over drinks in Atlanta one day, and I said, "Have you ever done your DNA?"
That would be right.
and then you went, "Yeah, I just did my DNA," and you went like this on your phone. Right. And I'm like, "Can you send that to me?" And we started looking through your DNA, and I'm like, "There's a whole, there's another story here. If we follow your DNA, we are telling the quintessential American food story."
Wow.
But that may technically be how it's structured and what it does, but really it was, and this came when we went to Chicago, because I remember sitting in the back seat of the car, and you and your aunt were talking, and you said something. I had always thought that your mother had passed away right before you went to college. It was right before you went to high school.
Yeah, it was it was a freshman year of high school.
Yeah. So when I learned that, just sitting there listening to y'all talk, I was like, oh, this is a different story. Because this is, and you said it later, this was the story of me finding my home.
Yeah.
Finding my way back home. So that whole journey of the food helped you find you again.
I'm going to say also, when Stephan and I were here a few weeks ago, probably about six to 8 weeks ago, and and him, being from Haiti and seeing Haiti so prevalent here in Chicago, I mean, I think it took him back home as well, and that's why Stephan, ended up on this journey with us. To write this book, and that's why he's here with us today. I know Stephan has a couple of questions he wants to ask you as well.
I'm not going to touch too much on the similarities of this connection, but it's just funny that my story, my personal story, my story as Chef Stephan started with that same journey of going back home. But Amy, the thing that interests me the most, really, my biggest question to you is, how was this adventure with Todd? Because I know how we connected, him and I, but I would like to hear from you on your perspective. Tell me the story of this adventure of writing this book.
Wow, there's so many different adventures because essentially, like, one, I'm endlessly fascinated by people and their stories, and I love finding, like, loss is a great connector, and so when you can connect with people over things like that, you're like, oh, I'm not so alone. But then there's other things where we would be trying something, a dish somewhere, And there was, I just remember us, like, we ate so much. The writing of this book. Oh my God. And remember how much food we would order at every place.
Oh my goodness.
But I loved one of my favorite things was walking through Little Caribbean, Little Senegal, Little Haiti, all of these places that are right here. And all of us tasting things and going, oh, this reminds me of. And we all had stories of memory tied to something that may not be from our culture directly, but there was a flavor or a scent or an experience, or we could understand how something was made. And so and one of my favorite thing ever was sitting listening to all the chefs argue about rice.
Oh my goodness!
Oh boy!
Was that at your dinner, Stephan? I think that might have been at the dinner.
That was the first time.
So I believe so. Yeah.
It happened so many times though.
I know, right? Oh my goodness!
Oh my God! There was the time that we were at Rebel.
Yeah.
And that was that first night in New York. New York had just opened. That was another thing. New York had just opened the week before from COVID, and you could get around everywhere. And people were so happy to just be in the presence of other people. And so we were seated at that long table up against the wall. There was all this great music from the islands playing. And everybody was arguing about
I remember very well because I was cooking that night.
And people were like, no, this is how you do it in Puerto Rico. No, this is how you do it. No, that's not the authentic. And it just cracked me up because everybody thinks they have the true. And what was beautiful is, like, when you started really comparing people's perception of what was authentic and real, and then marrying that, like we did with the history, the actual history and the research, you can totally understand why people would be like, no, this is real rice. This is real jollof rice. And it comes from marshmallows on sweet potatoes. You put brown sugar and pecans. Just like how everybody has their thing.
It's funny because that night in New York, we had, obviously we had Todd and we had you. And we had Clay, and then we had a Panamanian chef. So really, it's the whole story of the book. We had a Panamanian chef. We had a Dominican, Puerto Rican chef. We had
it sounds like a crazy joke you're about to say, you know?
Oh my God! And we had
one Puerto Rican, a Jamaican, and a Cuban walking a bar.
We had one guy from St. Lucia. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
But it was such a celebration, though, too, that it was so good-natured. And it was so, even though people wanted to put their stakes in the ground about what was authentic, people were just really good-natured about it. And it led to, and this is what I wish we could get to, because people are so divided right now, that you don't have to stick your stake in the ground and stop listening.
No.
You can hold whatever you think, but still experience, and understand where somebody else is coming from. And somewhere in there is a truth, and you can dig it and find it, or you can learn to appreciate something. And I think one of the things that really struck me in working with Todd on this book is that this is my country's history too. I'm not divorced from this because my ancestry didn't come from West Africa or the islands, but it's my country's history, and I'm not afraid of the complications of that in any way. It enriches me. It enlightened. It has opened my world. And the connections I see, like, I don't want to simplify it too much because I don't always think that food brings people together and that it's as simple as that we all sit down and break bread and that's going to help us overcome our differences.
No.
I would like to think that. I would like to think a slice of cake and 2 forks could solve a lot of the world's problems. but at the same time, when you see, like, there's so many dishes in that book that I see things that happened in my grandmother's kitchen.
Yep.
And I know
Yeah.
that she came from a poor farming family out in Childress, Texas, and way West Texas. I don't know always where she picked things up, but I know that, you know, it came from her daddy died when she was 12 years old, and she had to take over the family farm at 12.
You know, I don't know. You know, I don't know if, you know, if it was as simple as a slice of cake and two forks. You know, maybe some good chicken, you know, go along with it. You know, and
Yeah.
certainly if you get 8 chefs in a room with 3 bottles of rum, you're going to have a spirited conversation. you know,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there was a
yeah, and there
a
was
lot of
debates.
coffee and a lot of rum.
Yes, there's
But I
debates
think
all over
I
the
think
place.
I
Yeah.
think
And bourbon.
one of the
Mhm.
I think one of the things that becomes very certain and is that it's not a slice of cake and a fork, but it's more being open to listening each other's stories and saying, you know what, I can find myself in somebody else's story. And if you can find yourself in somebody else's story, and you can actually have a very slight connection, that becomes the bridge. That becomes the thing that says, you know what, we're not so different from each other after all.
That's the foundation of humanities, because we, as a history of oral storytelling, the griots, it was the connection from village to village. You told morality tales to help people stay, you know, to understand that there were dangers, you know, beyond this line there be dragons, you know, or something like that.
Right.
And so story is the essential building block of connecting people. And there's so much research now too that in reading is so essential to building empathy. And you know, if you tell a really good story in a cookbook and someone makes that dish because it connected to something to them, you've done something that's changed them.
Yeah, I really see that, you know, in the book itself, where, you know, where we started and where we ended, there were so many similarities of dishes that we came across, but the spice routes, you know, were something that we talked about, something that Stephan and I talk about all to this day, like the pickles and the lemongrass, you know, things that I didn't know about Haiti, and I thought I knew about a lot about Haiti. I didn't know, you know, I thought I knew a lot about everything until we actually wrote this book.
Oh
And
yeah,
then I
same
found
here.
out, you know,
I knew
then I
nothing.
found, and I knew nothing. You know, I think the biggest similarity I found in the book was really the beef spaghetti, and growing up in Chicago, you know, and just seeing, in DR, they have, they take spaghetti to the beach, and I'm looking right now, Lake Michigan is right around, a stone's throw away from where I am right now in Chicago, and still thinking about taking spaghetti to the beach with fried fish and things like that, or even talking to Stephan, when he came up here, and we walked around and just seeing the Sabo Museum, and now the Sabo is named for Lakeshore Drive, is that we found cornerstones of everyone's history in this book,
Yeah.
and it was such an appreciation, I think, that's coming through there. I want to talk about some surprises, though, because I think that a lot of times, in this process, and I'm not a big fan of using the word discovery, but I think there's things that we uncovered, that we didn't know, like Stephan with the lemongrass in Haiti as a reference point, But the thing is the red Kool-Aid. The jicama,
Yes.
I'm sorry, the sorrel, that we all loved, the red drink. I think there was so much that we learned from Jackie Summers, contributing to the book, and writing that, and understanding hibiscus in its natural form. What else did you find, in the book? And then I'm going to even ask that question to Stephan, because Stephan is a historian, as much as he is as a great chef. And I want to see what, did he find in the book that he finds surprising, or maybe he did not understand that happened before.
The beach spaghetti was a revelation to me, because when you talked about bringing spaghetti and fried fish to a beach, and I remember how surprised Clay and I were. Clay, the photographer,
Yeah, right.
we were like, "Huh?"
Clay
And
was
all I
about to
kept
take a photo and literally took his camera down and looked at me, and then and then went back to take the photo again. He couldn't
Yeah.
even focus on taking a picture.
Yeah. And we're sitting there at Calumet's talking about this, and I'm going, how, like, logistically, I was trying to figure out, because like going to the beach, even living close to it in Miami, it's such an ordeal, and all the stuff you have to take. So, I was so used to just a cooler with some sandwiches and some fruit, like very not very inventive at all.
People in the Caribbean don't do that.
Right. Well, then
we're taking the whole can and canister over there.
Right. And then Danny mentions it. Oh yeah, in the Dominican Republic, you always like take, and he goes, and it has salami, and he goes, and you have salami with egg. I was like, salami? Isn't that Italian? He goes, yeah. But, and then all of a sudden you start piecing all these things together. And so I made beef spaghetti for luncheon here of a book club, and I had to tell them all the story, and they all looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I was like, no, this is for real. I'm totally not lying to you. And it's my favorite thing now. But yes, definitely the hibiscus, because now I'm sort of addicted to hibiscus tea. And I make the hibiscus tea with the ginger and the allspice berries that is in the book all the time. And so those 2 dishes. But another thing was sort of the biggest thing I took away in terms of just cooking was just the layering. Like when you looked at Epis, when you looked at I'm blank, sofrito. And then you see how, the Holy Trinity, and you see all these connections, and just the way of layering flavor, it changed my palate. It changed the way I taste things and discern flavors now in food. So that changed how I eat and how I cook, frankly.
Wow.
A little quick parentheses.
I'm curious. I never even asked you this question before. So.
A little quick parentheses, just to play on history. Hibiscus is actually the national flower of Haiti. Most people don't know
we
that.
didn't put that in the book.
We didn't put that. I'm so sorry.
We didn't.
But that's okay though, because you're about to write a 3rd book. But
yeah. Oh man, if people
we already have the beginnings of the 3rd book.
Okay, so hibiscus is the national flower of Haiti, and it's mostly used to do hot tea, whereas in Jamaica they do a cold tea, an iced tea.
Right. Right.
Spaghetti.
Do you call it hibiscus in Haiti, or do you call it
it's called
sorrel elsewhere or sorrel?
Yes, it's called hibiscus in Haiti, and it grows everywhere.
Oh wow, that's great.
Nice.
That's good to know. I mean, and the word sorrel, for me, just in my classical cooking background, it's a whole different leafy vegetable.
Right. It's a green.
It's green. So. But Stephan, what'd you find in the book? And
then spaghetti. My father, the very first dish that he not only cooked for us, but taught us how to make was spaghetti with hot dogs.
Oh wow, yeah.
Okay, and believe me, the funny thing is, during World War II, a lot of Italians, because Haiti was actually the only country that just really opened its door. It was a free republic. It opened the door to anybody that was not only fleeing World War II from Europe, but also all the people that were being persecuted in Europe. A lot of Germans, a lot of Italians, they all were welcome into Haiti. So Italians started making a home in Haiti, which brought their own influences, obviously. But it wasn't until 1915 when the U.S. invaded Haiti and took over Haiti for quite a long time, that pasta became extremely popular.
Mm.
And that's where you see pasta becoming such a main staple in a lot of cooking in Haiti. For example,
and
your
then
pumpkin soup that you have in your book,
Mm-hmm.
your version of the Haitian pumpkin soup never had any pasta until later in 1915.
Oh, wow.
And I think in the Dominican Republic is where a pasta factory was built.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I also found interesting too in doing that research, like how did salami become such a big deal?
Oh boy.
And what's fascinating is it wasn't from Italians, it was from Jewish immigrants that came in. But it's primarily pork and beef based, so it wasn't even kosher.
No.
But and so that's sort of an anomaly too, that is something so distinct and unique of place. And
salami and fried cheese.
Yeah. I'm down for that.
Yeah,
any
right?
day.
Oh my goodness,
that sounds like a great charcuterie.
I hope my doctor's not listening because I can go for that too, So let's get.
Oh,
what?
Talk about we covered Seoul, in Seoul we covered the South pretty much, but I really just want to talk about the journey that we when we left the South, and and we talked about Chicago some, but going out to the West a little bit, when we really got right into the parts of Texas, and right before our wonderful publisher said, hey, this book is only supposed to be 400 pages, and you guys got 600 pages of book here. You got to cut it. You got to cut it off, and we'll get the next one after that. But the Southwest, I think, was really interesting because we pulled in Mexico. We pulled in Louisiana, Texas. We brought things over. We brought spices though over as well. That were coming from all parts of the Caribbean in that too. And I just find it fascinating that when we talk to people about that section of the book, and then in the LA chapter that we were starting to write about the Cuba influence, and everything like that, that people were migrating with food. And with seeds and with techniques. And it seems like a lot of that gets lost in translation a little bit because maybe the food is not the same, the ingredients may not be the same, but the techniques and things like that, people really brought along with them, and what was your take on that when you saw us, pull into that journey on those recipes?
That to me was something I hadn't seen in any other book and sort of not explored. And what I kind of loved about it is a lot of that was led by, remember in your DNA, we found Mexico.
Yeah.
Native American Mexico.
Yeah.
And it was like 7 or more generations. It was quite a while back. It was small, but even having that, you're like, okay, then that means this happened, this happened, this happened.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean in terms of food? And taking that journey up from Mexico through Texas, but then meeting it with the history of the Black cowboy.
Right.
And Black
really
trail
want to
riders.
give Zella Palmer a really big shout out, for contributing to that. Zella's going to be on the show in the near future.
Oh,
I really want to give her, a really good shout out for writing that part of it,
Right. And she had done some scholarship on that for her role at Dillard. And then sort of exploring that after emancipation, one of the only ways that freed Black men could actually have full citizenship into the U.S. was if they would serve in the cavalry and eradicate Native Americans from their lands. So it was like the oppressed had to become the oppressor to be accepted. And that was a whole other aspect of that westward expansion and the actual merging of cultures and foods again. And then when we were doing the California, that's not in the book, but will hopefully be in the next one, learning how much South Central LA became Louisiana.
Right.
It was like you picked up people from Louisiana and you put them over there. And so it had the jazz clubs, the Creole food. When we looked at all of those old menus from the 1940s,
Mm.
and you saw this sort of amalgamation of sort of Creole food, but also club food. You know, like you would see sort of that
I think that was
elevated.
interesting.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, this is a completely different story and not one that gets told very often. And also what were people looking for? And it was after the war, and it was like, okay, we're going to find something here that we can't find where we came from.
Mm.
But what we can bring with us is the thing that comforts us, and that's the food. And
I think that was really, just like the interesting part of it, when I look at it, that we talked about. I know Stephan and I talked about that a great deal, just the Louisiana, part of it, where he ties it back to Haiti better than
exactly
anyone that I know, and just understanding that. There was what happened this year, Stephan? I remember there was a festival this year celebrating Haiti and Louisiana.
Absolutely. So Louisiana, the city of New Orleans, is a sister city to Cape Haitian, which is the northern part, and where the last battle for Haiti's independence was fought. And a lot of people don't know that, Napoleon Bonaparte, France owned a very large part, not only of Louisiana, but all the way up to Texas, all that part. And when Napoleon was losing the battle against Haiti, he didn't have any money anymore to continue fighting. So he had to sell that whole part of land back to the United States. It's called the Louisiana Purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So you will find that a lot of free blacks that came from Haiti migrated during that time as well, not only to New Orleans, to Louisiana, but to Georgia, because for the United States, when the United States had the Battle of Savannah, a huge contingent from Haiti actually went to help fight the war.
Yeah, there's the monument in Franklin Square right outside First Baptist.
My mother was actually part of that team that helped to put that monument together.
Oh, cool!
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, because that's right there, right in front of First Baptist. Well, First African Baptist.
I mean, it's just so interesting. Now we're tying. We've gone. From West Africa all the way over to California. And we talked about Chicago. I think there's something that we covered though that I don't think a lot of people realize. People say, why is there a playlist in the book? I did that in Seoul, I did that here. But, it seems like along our journey, we're always sitting around with, great food, great libations, and plenty of music, and everything. And Stephan talks about the drum all the time. But one thing that I really find purposeful is that, when we started looking at the playlist, it was really just moving along in a way in the book that people may not even know. But I think that's something that goes along with understanding writing. And I just want to go back to the process a little bit. I came up with the playlist, but we had Clay Williams, really one of the best food photographers in the world. In myriad of cookbooks right now all across. But that process of seeing his photos and then going back to writing again, how did you marry that process of the two?
Well, so it was unusual because we actually did the photography before the manuscript was fully finished.
Which is something that's not normally done. Am I correct in saying that?
No, you're correct. Absolutely. and it was because we had a very crazy time frame. And so we kind of put those two things on top of each other. But we involved Clay so early. What I loved is he was part of the conversation all the time, instead of getting a manuscript and going, okay, how do I interpret this in a studio? He was walking it with us, talking it with us. He was as integral to the part. And in fact, some of the things that, some of the conversations we had around those tables with the drinks and the music, absolutely informed and shaped the way the writing went forward, because one of the things, we didn't want to, we're not historians, so we didn't want to pretend that we were historians. But like, how do you make this a personal story at the same time you're using a personal story as the backdrop for a much larger story of a nation, truly, and the roots and the hearts and the soul of a nation. So, but it's told through one chef, your personal story. And he, everywhere we went, traveling together, instead of telling him, oh, this is what we saw in Miami, this is what we saw in New York, this is what we did while we were in Chicago, it helped. I think that was so clear for him to sort of document. So I could actually go back, if I was having a memory issue, I could go back and look at those photos and go, that's right, that was the name. Culpeppers was the name of that great place where we had that coconut on the fit. Like, I could sit there and go, oh yes, this is where, that is the beautiful little bar where we did the hibiscus. Oh, there is the menu from that wonderful Senegalese restaurant right there on 116th. And so that sort of documentary aspect of it sort of kept me from having to always rely on my sometimes not very good notes. Because I would be so in the moment, I'd stop writing my notes, and I'd be like, oh, I trailed off right there. And oh my God, oh, thank God I have Clay's photos. But what I think too, is it so, like, remember there were times in some of the photographs where we would use newspaper, or we'd use a brown paper bag, or we'd use a plastic container, a takeout container, instead of something fancy, because it was being authentic to the dish. And watching the guys eat the barbecue off the hood of the car outside of Lem's.
Lem's barbecue right there.
Oh my God, money shot. Money shot.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's one of those golden moments that you're like, this, oh my God, this is where everything comes together.
I gotta tell that story though, very quick. So, we're taking the photo of these guys, of barbecue at Lem's, and these guys on the back, on the trunk with this paper spread out, eating. And we're like, hey, you guys, we're shooting a photo for a cookbook. You guys mind if we are in the cookbook, anything like that? They just shrugged their shoulders and just kept eating.
Yeah, they were like,
rib tips. Yeah, whatever, dude.
They had the rib tips.
Right, rib tips. And as long as you don't interrupt me from eating right now, I'm good.
Yeah, they're like,
yeah.
But I mean, like, that moment, that gave you everything you needed to know about the place. And you
absolutely.
And it was so real. And so, I mean, like, at that, you're going, if someone knows you're coming in to do a cookbook, and I think they put on something, they're not themselves. No, they were totally, utterly themselves. And those kind of, I think COVID in a way was a bit of a gift. I know there was a lot of loss associated with it, and I don't mean to diminish that in any way, but it created sort of a pressure cooker for how we were able to experience this in a very different way than we would normally. I
would definitely agree with that. What you got, Stephan? I know you got a couple more questions. You have about 15 minutes remaining, so I know we're trying to get a whole bunch of stuff in, in this short hour. But what you got for us?
No, because my whole, meeting Amy for the first time, and her attention to listening to us was such a different thing, and she was just sucking in. It's like she was recording without recording everything that we were saying. Every single story, and
sometimes I was recording. Just kidding.
It's not Watergate. You got the tapes.
I got the tapes.
But being on this adventure with you and with you guys, being Dare, with Clay, with Amy, and you, Todd, this was a first for me too. So I was sponging everything that I could, and then I was, every chance I got, I was trying to get something out of Amy.
One of my favorite moments was was when we were at the house in Miami and we all cooked.
Yeah.
And we were trying all the different dishes, and it was like a house party. We had music, and some of the people we'd met along the way showed up. They showed up at the house, and we got into these really interesting conversations about, like, one of the things that Danny was talking about at that one, we were eating the mushrooms and the trumpet mushrooms and the piglets and the oxtails. We were eating all of that there, and it was fabulous because we'd gone into that grocery store in Little Haiti and just like, we're like, yeah, we need that, grab that, like in every imaginable thing. And so we were all there trying dishes, and Clay was taking photographs. And then Danny had this existential question about, what does it really mean to be a chef and to do your food right? And y'all were giving him advice, and I was just listening, going, these kind of moments don't happen very often because everybody's in their world and they're working, and and when they do get together, it's usually at these awards or conferences, which have that are pretty structured. And so that wonderful moment, even just sitting at Versailles with all the pastries and all the croquettes and all the caffeine, but you're sitting there where major deals in Miami have gone down, and just talking about, what this food means and why it matters and how it is part of the flow of American food. And those kind of moments around food and around culture and around differences and around likenesses, those were gifts. And I don't know, had we not had COVID, would we have had those moments?
I don't know. Well, let me say it this way. We might have interpreted the moments a little bit differently.
Right.
I believe that we would not have maybe had so much detail into the finer things or the subtle differences that we found along the way. Cramming those things in, we really have had to force ourselves to pay attention to, more detailed understanding. I find myself listening way more than talking, doing a lot of those things, tasting, way more than cooking. And that, to me, that's the hallmark of a great cookbook. When you find the author has really just shut up and ate the entire journey throughout the cookbook. And
that's the next cookbook title. Shut up and eat.
Right.
Shut up and eat.
Yeah.
But you see, Amy, you've just given a very simple but deep definition of what the title of this book is: Roots, Heart, and Soul. It's really diving into the nitty gritty, the backstory of what food means to each and every one of us, differently, but with a whole lot of similarities.
I was so grateful when Todd came up with the title.
Right. Oh, that's a struggle in itself, because you sit there and you throw it on the wall, and all of them work, except for none of them work until you just start to slow down and say, well, what about this? What are we saying?
We had, how many different titles did we have? We had so many.
All right.
And then, and it was just sort of, nothing felt right until it was right.
That's the best way to describe it. Describe the process. So what's on the horizon? You know, what's coming on next? You have any new books in the works that you're working on? Any great authors you're working with?
I am working with a chef out of Oakland, California, named Crystal Wapapa on her debut cookbook. She is a Native American chef. And I am, again, it is one of those things where I'm learning so much about our country's history and how food is so being separated from your food and being separated from your culture, how harmful that is, and how reconnecting to it is so healing. And I mean, the interesting thing there is when we talk about indigenous cuisine, we so often think of just the middle of the country, the sort of the Great Plains and woodlands kind of aspect of it. But she is from an urban community, Oakland, which has, if it's not the largest urban indigenous population, and I don't want to say that unless I confirm it, but in the 1950s, it was the resettlement of Native Americans all over as tribes were being decommissioned by the U.S. government and forced into the city so that they could have the mineral rights back to the lands, basically.
Wow.
And how they were not able to practice their religions, their customs, cook with their own seeds, or grow their own foods, cook with their own seeds because their food had been commodified. And until 1978.
Wow.
I mean, like when you think of that, that's our history. And to think that in a nation that says, you know, in the First Amendment to the Constitution, you will not, freedom of religion, an entire body of people that were native to this land were prevented from. I mean, so it's really fascinating. Wow. So, and her whole, her restaurant serves food grown from tribes because she has 16 different tribal representations within her restaurant alone. So she tries to cook from all of those.
Wow.
And tries to cook pre-colonial in terms of there's not butter, there's not cream, there's not sugar, there's either honey or maple, a lot of berries, the three sisters of corn, squash, and beans, and it is phenomenal food. And,
wow.
So that's what I'm working on.
I'm looking at Delta right now. Okay, so Stephan, it's time to go.
Okay, we need to go to Oakland. We need to go to Oakland.
Let me know, buddy.
Also, good barbecue out there.
I'm ready. I'm ready to get on plane.
Yeah, so
Dominica, who really hosted us, for our Roots Heart Soul in Oakland. That pop up she did for us was unbelievable.
Oh, I'm sad I haven't been on the road with y'all.
Yes, I mean it was just so delicious and everything. To have Brian Terry was there, DJing, and just the food was outstanding. And most of our staff, speaks Spanish only. So here I am coming to work in the kitchen and do these dishes with them, but that's the beauty about food, that we may not have the same lingual language, but we have the same food language. So,
right.
After two dishes, we all knew how to get down in that kitchen, and it was, I'm just so grateful that Dominica, really just opened up her restaurant for us.
Where are y'all going next? Y'all got Creole Fest?
We got Creole Fest in New York. Then we have
Atlanta.
Creole Fest in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have dates in North Carolina, in Arizona.
I'm going to get y'all here to Savannah.
Yeah, Savannah. Yes, we got to
come
down
fall,
there.
Absolutely.
Because it's too hot.
Right. It's too hot right now. It's too hot everywhere. Yeah.
Savannah would be really fun.
Savannah in the fall, right before right before award season.
All right. All right. That's a perfect
So
timing.
that people will buy these for Christmas gifts.
There you go.
Absolutely. We're still working out the rest of the tour, but but Amy, we really appreciate you so much for coming on with us.
I'm
On our
so glad
first
to be with you.
episode of Roots Heart Soul. It's such a great
Absolutely.
pleasure. To have you here. With us.
Aw.
And where can they
I'm
find you on
honored to
social
be in your
media?
presence again.
Yeah.
For me,
Where can they
meeting
find
you was an absolute pleasure.
Same.
Can you give
Mutual
us
Admiration Society.
your social media handle, Amy, so everyone can follow you?
Oh, so on Instagram, it's at The Refinery Writes.
Okay.
So it's at The Refinery Writes on Instagram, and just Amy Paige Condon on Facebook. I also have
Facebook.
on X or Twitter or whatever it's called. It is Refinery Writes.
At Refinery Writes.
Yeah, so you can find me there. I'm a terrible Twitter person or a terrible X person because I get so frustrated.
Yeah, today is
also,
X,
I'm kind of a
tomorrow's
terrible
Y.
social media person, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Today is X, tomorrow's Y. Later on, it'll be Z. Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, and I don't even have a TikTok. I mean, I'm just too old. I mean, I'm not hip.
Just say well seasoned,
well traveled.
Right, that's even better.
I'm a little more well traveled.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us on our first episode. We are so
absolutely.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. From the beginning when you invited me to be part of the journey of writing this book with you. I mean, it was life-changing, and it was such an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful that it created friends of us, all three of us.
Well, we have to thank the greatest agents of authors in the world, Lisa and Sally.
Lisa and Sally,
Eckes, for doing so. Stephan, go ahead and close us out.
They're good matchmakers.
I always say this: nothing happens by accident. Right. Everything had been written down prior to us meeting each other. It was a blessing for me meeting Todd when we did, and meeting you as well, Amy. So this was the very first episode of Roots, Heart,
and Soul.
And this was with Amy Condon, the co-writer of Roots, Heart, and Soul, the second book of Todd Richards. We invite you to follow us both on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, Roots, Heart, and Soul podcast. Join us for the next episode. We have plenty of amazing guests that are coming to join this adventure, this journey, in telling the stories, the culture, sharing everything that means so much to us, but always around food.
All right, so we'll see everyone next week, 7 p.m. Always on time and always delicious. So we talk soon.
Always delicious.
All right.
Always
Thank you all.
delicious.
All right, talk to you all.